April to December, the St. Lawrence Seaway is a waterway to the world for the Midwestern United States and Canada. Hundreds of seagoing ships flying the flags of many nations regularly ply this Great Lakes route, carrying automobiles, steel, and manufactured products on the upbound trip, then cereal grains, corn, soybeans on the return. Duluth, Minnesota, and Superior, Wisconsin are inland seaports through which about 170 million bushels of grain are exported each year. A large portion of the total is wheat from North Dakota. Hard amber durum wheat, used to make spaghetti and macaroni. And hard red spring wheat, also known as dark northern spring, or DNS for short. Its high protein quality and quantity make it very much in demand by the bread flour millers around the world. The 600-plus country grain elevators in North Dakota all have a part in the export of wheat, for nearly one-half of the annual crop will be shipped overseas. The farmer sells his wheat to the country elevator, which in turn ships it either by truck or rail to a terminal market. The lowest freight rate determines the method. Freight rates vary with the distance to market. In the shipping season, most North Dakota export grain moves to either Duluth Superior or Minneapolis, although some does go west to Pacific ports. The eastbound grain then moves from Duluth Superior through the St. Lawrence Seaway, while Minneapolis grain goes by barge down the Mississippi to Gulf ports. In the winter, it all moves by either truck or rail. All seaport and terminal elevators are high-volume operations, and so grain is handled as rapidly as possible. Prior to being unloaded, state inspectors probe and sample each load for official grading purposes. The terminal elevator then bins the wheat until it is to be loaded aboard a vessel. 67 million bushels can be stored in the Duluth Superior silos. This typical bulk cargo ship is upbound through the St. Lawrence Seaway, carrying a load of steel from Antwerp, Belgium to Detroit, Michigan, and Duluth Superior. The La Chacra is loaded to 26 feet, maximum seaway depth. Built especially to ply the St. Lawrence Seaway, the La Chacra's holds are quite spacious, designed to carry bulk cargo only. For the return trip, the vessel will haul grain to Holland. 16,000 metric tons of hard red spring wheat. Translated, that's 588,000 bushels, or about 50 million loaves of bread. The grain is loaded 1.5 tons at a measure, and as it pours into the ship, state and federal inspectors continually sample the cargo for grading purposes. Wheat is exported to exact grade specifications. The holds are filled right to the top, so the cargo cannot shift at sea. After the ship is filled to seaway depth and is inspected by the insurance company's surveyor, the watertight hatches are closed for the journey. Every precaution is taken to protect the million-dollar cargo from the loss of quality risk. Assisted by tugboats, the big ship moves slowly away from the terminal. Soon the La Chacra passes grain carriers being loaded at other seaboard terminals and heads toward Lake Superior. The La Chacra's voyage with her cargo of North Dakota spring wheat didn't just happen. It's only a small shipment in a vast pipeline of wheat, a pipeline with branches that reach all over the world. In order to understand this wheat export business, let's look at it from the importer's point of view. Let's assume that I am a wheat buyer for a flour mill in a member country of the European Economic Community, the common market. And let's assume that this is my office. Now, as a buyer for a flour mill, I must continually purchase wheat all over the world. I buy both spring and winter wheat, both hard and soft varieties, in a wide range of protein levels. And then we blend the imported wheat with native varieties to get exactly what are in the world every month of the year. And the world grows about 11.5 billion bushels per annum. It's the most widely traded food commodity simply because it's a principal source of man's food supply. From our viewpoint in Europe, we see the world wheat market, with every wheat-growing country competing to sell their grain to our mill. And they all compete on a highly scientific basis. Plant breeders, for example, are systematically seeking to improve agronomic and milling characteristics of the varieties grown in their own countries. Then cereal chemists regularly test and evaluate the milling and baking characteristics of the experimental varieties. The results are compared to the current production varieties. In every flour mill, the same procedures are applied to each lot of wheat used in the grist. Of all the tests used, actual baking provides the best answers. So, flour mills analyze their products by baking bread. Loaf volume is one measure of quality. The difference in size indicates the bigger rolls were made from a stronger variety of wheat. Right at this moment, the ship is between Lake Superior and Lake Huron. It's entering the Sault Ste. Marie locks. It'll be about 2 weeks before her cargo will arrive in Europe. This cargo of spring wheat was ordered nearly 6 weeks ago. In Europe, flour millers import from many countries, first from one, then from the other. There's never any set pattern. There are 3 major considerations. First, quality. It takes considerable time to adjust milling procedures, so most buyers like a stable source of uniform quality, protein, and milling characteristics. And they like it with every shipment, every crop year, as regular as possible. Now, with the quality of the wheat being equal, the other 2 considerations are shipping position and price generally makes the difference. To give you an example, 1/8 of a cent per bushel of the La Chacra's cargo could amount to over $700. Trades are made because of need. The baker needs flour. In turn, the miller needs wheat. So the worldwide pipeline of wheat flows steadily. International trading is a terribly complicated and risky procedure. When you think of the market fluctuations, the language barriers, the political differences, the shipping problems, the currency and exchange variations, plus exporters keeping track of thousands of ships, cargoes, and so on, it makes you wonder why anyone wants to trade wheat in the world market. Foreign trade, by economic necessity, must be a two-way operation. As the La Chacra sails downbound past Detroit, Michigan, with her cargo of North Dakota wheat, she passes the city where, just a few days before, she discharged part of her cargo of European steel. It's on the Detroit River that the La Chacra completes the second day of her eastbound voyage. The European Economic Community grows a considerable amount of wheat. France, for example, produces both bread wheats and macaroni durum, even the identical varieties of durum that are grown in North Dakota. However, in the baking process, most European-grown wheat flours need additional gluten strength. Gluten is the material that helps produce a good-tasting, light, and airy loaf of bread. So to fill the gluten deficiency, the European millers import high-protein, strong gluten wheat to augment the weaker continental varieties. The exact mix varies from year to year. But here's a typical combination. About 20% of this loaf of bread is hard red spring from North Dakota, while the remaining 80% is European soft wheat. This is the basic reason European mills import wheat. The price paid for imported wheat is not completely regulated by the factors of supply and demand. International politics have a great deal to do with price. An example is in the Netherlands. 35% of the wheat in a pound of flour must be grown there. The other 65% can come from anywhere. In Japan, the government food agency, acting through Japanese traders, actually buys the wheat from around the world, imports it, and then retails it to the millers. Every country has its own import and tax laws, and these laws control the price of imported grain. This mill, like thousands of others around the world, needs wheat in a continuous, uninterrupted stream. So buyers continually purchase about 90 days ahead of the miller's needs. Here's how it works. The buyer issues a tender to export agents right here on the continent. They represent export companies from many nations. The tender is specific. 15,000 metric tons, number 2 dark northern spring, 14% protein, to be shipped between 45 and 60 days from now. Cost insurance freight paid to Rotterdam. Birth terms means unloaded. Full out-term guarantee, and it's to be paid for cash against documents in Rotterdam. This message goes to all export countries, Canada, USA, Russia, and the others. Now, real competition for the sale begins. When it's afternoon in Europe, the export offices in New York and Minneapolis are just opening for morning business. A grain exporter's home office must be a communications center, with message wires radiating to every company office in the world. Market information, crop estimates, weather factors, political news, all affect grain prices. So it is essential that a trader have all of this information instantly available at his fingertips. When the message from the European agent arrives at a home office,
here's one from Rotterdam, Jim. 15,000 metric tons, number 2 DNS, 14 protein, shipment 45 to 60 days, tip Rotterdam, birth terms. What do you think? Shall we go after the business?
Well, DNS 14 opened at $1.65 Minneapolis. Canadian crops and weather look excellent. Australian supplies are burdensome. Let's see if we can sell.
Okay, let's do it.
the same scene is probably taking place in a dozen or more grain trading companies around the globe. Traders have only a few hours to make firm offers to sell. First, they must determine if they have the physical grain in position to sell, or be willing to run the risk of buying grain in time to load a vessel. Wheat can be purchased directly from grain merchants or through a commodity or grain exchange. There are two sides to a grain exchange: the cash market and the futures market. Trading begins with the bell. In the pit, grain for delivery at a later date is bought and sold. This part of the market was developed to allow a miller to contract for future delivery of grain, thus ensuring continuity of the grain stream into his mill. Most countries only harvest wheat once a year, but bread products are consumed at a steady rate year-round. So the futures market helps keep wheat prices from fluctuating wildly at harvest time.
July 156 and a quarter bid. September 158 28 1/8 bid.
Representative transactions, as well as those from other commodity exchanges, are posted. Where the futures market exists to fill long-range needs, the cash market handles present or short-range requirements. In the cash market, carloads of grain actually in transit are represented by a small sample. As they have for over 100 years, buyers and sellers get together and bargain. The supply source asking, the demand side bidding, in 1/8 cent increments.
$1.22 on that. $1.22 for this?
The sellers usually represent country elevator accounts, while the buyers work for millers or exporters. Trading prices are affected by a variety of factors. For example, weather reports from the crop growing areas exert tremendous influence on buy and sell decisions.
41. Moisture.
Market news services provide traders with worldwide crop production estimates, foreign and domestic political news, technological information, currency fluctuations, many other bits of intelligence essential to help a trader's judgment. In our Holland-bound example, the export company must now package the offer. The costs of grain, shipping, insurance, all the other variables must be estimated and a delivered in Rotterdam price determined. First, the trader must figure the wheat price ready to sail from a seaport terminal. Begin at a central North Dakota country elevator. The farmer gets, for example, $1.45 per bushel. Then add the elevator charges of 5 cents for handling. Shipping to Duluth or Minneapolis about 22 cents. Elevation at the terminal and loading is 3 cents, and the total ready to sail, or FOB, is $1.75 in either Duluth for the Seaway or Minneapolis for the Mississippi trip to the Gulf. If the grain were to go to the Gulf, we must add 13 cents for barge freight and another 3 cents for Gulf terminal elevation, making $1.91 FOB ocean vessel. From Duluth Superior, a considerable amount of export wheat is shipped by lake vessels to seaports in the lower St. Lawrence River, and then either transshipped to vessels too large for the Seaway or used to top off ocean-going ships only partially filled due to Seaway depth restrictions. In our example, we add 13 cents lake freight and elevation, and the wheat would be worth $1.88 at Montreal. In all FOB prices, the exporter must include these costs: the grain, handling, storage, interest, allowances for losses, necessary certificates, fixed expenses, and hopefully a profit. Sometimes the bid will be at exact cost or lower, just to keep the terminal elevator operating. So you can see fobbing charges vary from firm to firm and with each geographical location. Now, the exporter literally shops the London, Tokyo, and New York shipping markets for vessels to take the wheat cargo. The shipping companies quote prices in dollars per ton.
Oh, a big one, you say? 40,000. What are you working on for them?
There are other factors that affect the export price: marine insurance, war risk insurance, hold rail insurance, finance charges, commissions, stevedoring, full outturn guarantees, discharge cost, demurrage and dispatch, separation of cargo and holds, overtime, unexpected shutdowns, strike stoppages, all are taken into consideration. And they can add up to about $2 per metric ton, or about 5.5 cents per bushel. In our example, the best ocean freight prices are $7.50 per metric ton from Duluth Superior to Holland, $4.50 from New Orleans, and $4 from Montreal. The exporter now applies the United States Department of Agriculture's subsidy quotation to the price. It's this subsidy, paid per bushel, that allows the exporter to compete in the world market. In our example, let's say the subsidy is 7 cents per bushel for Atlantic and lake ports and 10 cents per bushel for the Gulf ports. Apply the subsidy to our examples, and it is apparent that it is best to ship from Duluth Superior. So that's the way the exporter offers. 7 U.S. and Canadian exporters are offering DNS or the Canadian equivalent grade. Australia is offering Prime Hard, and Russia's competing with SKS-14. Now remember, it's a world market. A mill will buy at the world's lowest price, quality considered. Price competition in the world market is extremely intense. Without USDA export subsidies, hard red spring wheat would be in the least competitive position of all U.S. wheat in the world market. And to add to the risk, every contract has penalty clauses with heavy discounts if the grain delivery doesn't meet exact contract specifications.
The Le Chacre has now reached the Welland Canal, which bypasses Niagara Falls, New York. It's only 28 miles across this strip of Ontario, but a full day's trip. Le Chacre is 614 feet long and 75 feet wide, the maximum permitted width. It takes nearly 20 minutes for the ship to negotiate each lock. The pilot, a specialist in navigating the canal, guides the ship through at a snail's pace. 3 of the canal's 8 locks are twin locks, with ships going up and coming down at the same time. Once through the Welland Canal, the ship sails across Lake Ontario and into the Thousand Island area of the St. Lawrence River, past old castles. The North Dakota grain glides silently. 7 more locks, and the ship is out in the Atlantic Ocean. 7 days from Duluth Superior, but still 7 days from Rotterdam. During the nice days at sea, the crew paint, repair, and keep the vessel shipshape. In the middle of the night, the Le Chacre docks in Rotterdam. It's the world's busiest harbor and the gateway to the canal system of Europe. Almost everywhere in Europe is reachable by barge from Rotterdam. The ship is unloaded by a floating elevator. The grain is pumped out by a vacuum, weighed, and loaded on a river barge. Barges are usually operated by a family who actually live on the vessel. Barges vary in size and draft. The smaller craft are used to haul cargo up rivers and canals that cannot be served by bigger ones. 16,000 barges regularly ply the Rhine River. The mills in Europe are usually located on a waterway. This mill is the largest one in its country. The North Dakota spring wheat is unloaded from the barge by vacuum. Other barges loaded with French and European wheat await their turn to be discharged. The output of the mill also moves by barge. This load of flour is bound for the Congo. Less than 5% of it is North Dakota hard red spring wheat. The rest is European, for the end product will be the pancake-like bread which is consumed in Africa. The scientists who develop and test wheat varieties at North Dakota State University also play an important part in marketing spring wheat and durum abroad. Foreign millers and wheat buyers regularly visit university laboratories where cereal scientists explain the annual crop quality survey produced for the State Wheat Commission. A wheat flour farinogram is like a fingerprint. No two are exactly alike. But a milling expert can check certain wheat qualities instantly with farinogram.
University personnel also go overseas to present informational seminars to local milling industry officials. At the same time, they visit cereal chemists in the many mills that grind spring wheat and durum flours. Nearly half of North Dakota's wheat crop is sold overseas, so technical information exchanges between millers and wheat developers is essential. Balance of trade with foreign countries means imports should equal exports. These autos have just arrived in Seattle by ship. Now the vessel's being loaded with hard spring wheat for the return trip to Japan. Just a few short years ago, the Japanese did not import wheat products from the United States, but now they buy 100 million bushels annually, plus great quantities from Australia and Canada. So, you see, foreign trade is a risky and infinitely complex operation. The exporting of wheat from the Dakota prairies is much more than just loading a boxcar or truck and hauling it to a port city. The need for wheat in the importing country must first exist. Then the governments of both the exporting and importing countries must adjust their controls to allow a trade to take place. And finally, the free market system in operation will establish a price at which a trade will happen. Today, North Dakota hard red spring and durum wheats are in demand only because of the unique qualities they possess. As long as these qualities exist, the demand and market should exist. And ships like the Le Chacre will continue to ply the 7 seas, carrying North Dakota hard red spring and durum wheats to feed the expanding population of our hungry world.